Today, welcome to class. This is my last class concerning end time mission. So we've been looking at the various aspects of the end time revelation and what the church has actually done. Most contemporary church has done is basically to amplify the aspect of the Antichrist, the false prophet, tribulation, rapture, so much so that the church is demobilized to do missions. The church, so you see a lot of Christians who grew up in this end time with end time revelation of Antichrist, false prophet, perilous times, but who never connected end times with missions. And that was because of this wrong, imbalanced emphasis of the end time revelation that focused on the Antichrist, what the devil is doing, is pushback and is haste to bring destruction because he knows his time is short. That is not the end time. That's not the fullness of the end time. That's just an aspect of the end time revelation. So, but what I said we should do in this course and what we try to do in this course is to get us to focus on that end time revelation that propelled mission work. And that's because the Lord Jesus Christ, like I said, the end times began with the death, burial, resurrection of Jesus Christ. So that's the understanding of the end time we should have. That Jesus Christ has inaugurated his kingdom by his death, burial, resurrection, and ascension. That he's waiting for his enemies to meet his footstool, and that he has sent us to gather the nations. So the end times, like I showed us from Genesis chapter 49, verse 1, I showed us from Isaiah chapter 2, Micah chapter 4, Amos chapter 9, 11. It's about the gathering of the nations. Acts chapter 15, it's about the gathering of the nations. So that's what the end time revelation is about. So as we conclude this class, let's talk about, so if the end time is more about the gathering of the nations, which it is, because it says the gospel will be published as a witness in all the nations, and then the end will come. How do we do it? They are, let me call it, I've done this before, I've taught you this before, because, but let me just say it. How do we do ministry in unengaged communities, in a place where, for example, that's what we do, they're 100% Islam? We do what we call submarine Christianity, submarine evangelism, submarine church planting. The submarine works underwater. We call it underground churches. That's what they did in China. With all the persecution of communism and atheism, the church is growing so much that by 2030, it's projected that we'll have 40 million Christians in China. A majority of them are underground churches. So we must learn to pray without making noise. We must learn to evangelize without handbills and all of those stuff. All right. So that's what we do in places where you have 100% Islam. And then we begin to change the narrative bit by bit, bit by bit. And of course, when, and then you don't, some people must be willing to pay the price. What they used to do before is that when a Muslim get born again, they take him from the north and bring him to the south. We don't do that anymore. When they get born again, they stay in the midst of their people. They will not kill them. They will force them to renounce. What will happen many times is that if they endure persecution, they will win others, and after a while they will let them be. So that's the way it is. Sometimes they will drive the missionary. We've had that experience. And sometimes the missionary refuses to go. We've also had that experience. They live among the people, trust God that God will protect them. And God has come through several times. So it's very important that we learn to do missions, not in the conventional way that will make a whole lot of noise, put banners, shout. No. If you're really going to spread the gospel, then sometimes you may have to, like in Western, because I believe in reverse missions. They brought the gospel to us, must take the gospel to them. You must soundproof your church so that you don't make noise. So those are the things you have to do when you are walking among the unreached or among the unengaged. Then if you're walking among the unchurched, you must not use what I call Christianese. Yeah, I remember when I led my uncle to Christ. He was a big guy, an MD in the bank. I was, if I, he, I, it was in leading to Christ I learned to change my Bible. I stopped using King James. He didn't understand King James. Even me, I was trying to understand King James. I was using the word like paraventure. He asked, what does paraventure mean? I said, perhaps. I said, then use perhaps. Why using paraventure? I was using words like Christendom. He said, what is Christendom? I said, kingdom. He said, then you use the word kingdom. You understand? So in leading him to Christ, I was using word like sanctification. He asked, what does that mean? I said, separatism from sin. He said, why don't you just say so? Why do you say sanctification? You understand? So I learned to use simpler translations, and I also learned to. So we must, if we're going to win the unchurched, then we must avoid this Christianese, speaking in languages that people don't understand. You know, we have our own language, which is good, I understand, but we must um, take the gospel to them. We must. Paul said, First Corinthians 9, from verse 19 to 22. While I was with the Jews, it behaved like the Jews, dressed like the Jews, spoke like the Jews. Among the Gentiles, it was different. You understand? He said he has been all things to all men, I might save some. We must be able to do that. You cannot win sinners dressed like as if you're in a monastery. You have to dress like say the way you dress in the real life. So there's a whole lot you do to begin to bring people such that they accept you before they accept your message. So in the end times, that's what you do. In the end times, we must not come with the same. We must not insist that Christianity must have the same atmosphere everywhere, the same way everywhere. We must be able to. We call it. We must contextualize and we must incarnate ourselves in the culture. We must dress like the people. We must dress like them, and not be like them. So be able to win them. They must be able to hear us, receive us before they receive the message. All right. So there's a whole lot we can do in the last days, but we must not change the message, and we must be willing to pay the price. We must disciple. We must disciple is not just what you do in church. Disciple at home. Disciple where they are. So there's a whole lot we need to do if we are going to take the gospel and prosper in the last days, where the church is outlawed, where you are told not to preach. In Western societies now, they are told not to preach, but you still preach the gospel. So how do you do it? You must use your lifestyle, but also the message. There are different ways. It's a whole different course, on that. So, but we must believe that sometimes we must also be able to confront the spirits. I used to call it, what do I call it? Confrontational evangelism. There's a place for that. So you must be led by the Spirit of God. There's a time that you have to come out boldly. There's a time you have to come low. You have to go underground. I have a friend who after they burned his church several times, went to rented some stores in the big market. They didn't know it was church and began to do church. No noise in the market. So if you're going to burn that church, you have to burn the whole market. So God will give us wisdom. But it's doable. It's doable. My brothers and sisters, Endtime missions is doable. And then, of course, use the internet. We must use the internet. AI. Embrace AI. Embrace AI. Don't let AI, don't let Satan use AI. Embrace AI. Embrace technology. There's a senior minister that I respect a lot who has an AI pastor. Olubi Johnson. He has mentioned his name. He has an AI pastor. He calls him Pastor J. He calls him. He has an AI pastor, and the guy preaches his messages. You understand? So we must embrace technology, because there are those who will reach through technology. You understand? And those we must reach by ourselves. We must be like Paul, who was all things to all men. That's the end time. God bless you.